This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime. In association with Micromax. Nothing like anything.
Conversation with Jayesh Parekh, Managing Partner of Jungle Ventures and an active angel investor based out of Singapore. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'll begin by asking you your experience of having worked in the Silicon Valley with IBM for over a decade and then moving on to TV and now the world of startups. How did that transition take place and what particularly in startups caught your attention?
So I'm actually a forced entrepreneur. What happened is that I was in IBM in US, in Houston, and they asked me if I wanted to help them by starting India as a country.
Okay.
And so I said no to them because I've never worked in India and I didn't want to move to India. And they came back and said that no, this job was in Singapore. It is an offshore operation. So from Singapore, you'd have to travel to India to start India as a country.
Okay.
So that's when I said, okay, I looked up Singapore on the map. And my wife and I agreed and decided that that's a terrific place that we want to go. So I actually moved to Singapore and did this IBM offshore operations. And for 4.5 years, we were a group of mercenary IBMers who started India as a country. Wow. Then IBM actually physically moved to India, at which point I said that I don't want to move to Bangalore. At that point, this was way back in 1993. And so I quit IBM and I became a forced entrepreneur. Because I was in Singapore, I didn't want to go back to Houston and I didn't want to move to Bangalore. Okay. And so I became a forced entrepreneur. So then I did 9 startups. Wow. So again, business acumen is required to do business. I knew nothing about business, but my family lineage is all businessmen. I'm the first generation, my brother and I, who have worked for someone. Okay. And so at that point in time, here was my opportunity. And I took that opportunity and I jumped out and I said, okay, let me do a couple of startups and see if it works. And so some of them were disasters and some of them worked with dream jobs. And so one of them, of course, was this huge opportunity I got to be a co-founder in the entertainment channel network. And then at that point in time, we of course didn't have our joint venture partners, but I jumped in and I said, hey, this looks like a terrific, I knew nothing about television, but what an experience, of course. It culminated in a joint venture with Sony and Sony Pictures, and then we established the Sony Entertainment Network, which then of course we finally sold to Sony, as you know.
Singapore is considered to be one of the best startup ecosystems in the world. There were reports of many young entrepreneurs wanting to shift their base to Singapore last year. What makes Singapore such a popular destination for entrepreneurs to start up?
First and foremost is the lifestyle, right? So you have 3 different lifestyles. One is the lifestyle in India, which is a buzz, it's very hectic, and along with it comes everything that we all know here in India. America is America. It's relatively a different culture in terms of business, the lifestyle, the quality of life that you live on a day-to-day basis. It's really quite difficult, especially people who come from Indian background, right? So for me, when I was in America, of course, I had a great time. The people are superb. But the day-to-day living, the operating life in America is a little bit difficult because everything you have to do yourself, right? So it's that lifestyle. Versus here you have help, and therefore there are people who are looking after all your comfort and needs. Singapore is a perfect amalgamation of the two, right? So you have the excellent infrastructure, you've got fantastic education system, you've got law and order, right? You've got all the things going for you, but you also have the Asian culture, and especially for Indians, there's a lot of food and culture and activities and events and concerts and music, all of that comes along with it. Plus, the added advantage that you're just a hop away, 3 hours away to 5.5 hours away from all the major metros of India, right? As against you have to fly 24 to 36 hours depending on where you are in America. So I think that proximity to India is a huge boon because then you feel connected. I am just as if I'm living in a suburb. So people in Dubai say that, and people in Singapore, Bangkok, all of these cities, they are quite lucky that we are so close to India.
The startup space in India is buzzing right now. There are many, many young Indians wanting to join the world of startups every day. How do you look at the startup space in India overall?
Yes, so I'll actually start from Silicon Valley, right? So Silicon Valley startup is working extremely well. The next best place is Israel. And the reason these two places work is because they understand the intersection of technology and economics, commerce and techno. That combination they understand extremely well. So even if you're a technical person coming from an engineering side, they have this business acumen, business savvy to understand the economics and the commerce of that product or service that they're selling. Or if you're coming from a business angle, they understand what technology they need to implement to make that service happen, right? So they do an excellent job of that. Here in India, we are mainly services oriented. You don't see that many product companies, right? It's changing, and I hope it changes for the better. But as of now, it's more to do with services oriented, because there's a huge opportunity here for services, and people are going after services business. Now, in Singapore, I think we have again the same intersection, right, of the best of both worlds. We are at the center of all of Asia Pacific and ASEAN, because Singapore is a regional headquarter for a lot of companies. So we are very fortunate in that way that we are splat in the middle of all the action. Its connection to both India and China is extremely good. So people who are investing in China or doing business with China, Singapore is a good two-way connection. And same thing with India. Singaporeans love to invest in India. In India. Therefore, I think it's a good pivotal point. In terms of people, a lot of people who are technical people or business people or entrepreneurial want to come to Singapore. They want to live there. The lifestyle there is excellent. Things work, right? To establish and register a company hardly can take you 45 minutes to 3 hours, depending on how complicated you want to make it happen. So things move at a very rapid pace. Bureaucracy is the least. Corruption is almost non-existent. So I think that way it's the lifestyle that you choose. And then of course it's at the hub of a big market. So I think that combination, Singapore has just seen suddenly in the last 5 years how it has just completely blossomed. And of course along with it has come a lot of capital. So it helps. So a lot of entrepreneurs feel that that's a terrific place for you to go and start a company, because of course there is a lot of capital available as well. And then of course the last thing is the technical. So the technical platform, right? So in terms of the technical skills, India is of course by far the largest skill base. So if you want to develop a product very quickly and you need 100 to 500 coders and programmers or technical people, then you have no choice, right? There's no other place that will give you that rapidness. Now, of course, US has a different advantage where the senior architects or the database, whether it is the architects or the designers of serious big products, I think that's fairly easy to do it in US, because the learning curve is very shallow, small. Whereas in India, of course, the learning curve is quite significant. I think that again is an intersection with Singapore is a good place, because a lot of senior technical people want to come and live in Singapore. So there are local Singaporeans who are good in technology, but also there are other people who are coming from outside and they've settled down, and senior people want to settle down in a place like Singapore. So that helps. Again, a lot of large scale coding for a lot of this product actually does happen in India, right? So Singapore is a good base from which it's easy to manage a project in India, versus if you're in America and it's a day and night problem. So it's not quite convenient from that point of view. So Singapore is actually a good platform for that. It's a good balance for that.
Okay. Well, you funded startups in Singapore and in India. What entrepreneurial behavior do you see is different from the entrepreneurs that you meet in India versus the ones that you meet in Singapore?
So I think the biggest number one thing is WYSIWYG, right? So I think Singaporeans are very straightforward from my point of view. Is what they say is what they mean, and they deliver what they mean, and it's all straightforward. By and large, it's all clean in terms of the business, the processes, the accounting, the auditing, all of that. Everything is just sort of, I'm generalizing it. I mean, there could be a few sporadic mishaps here and there. People who are outside India, it takes a little bit of time for them to understand India. It's not that the people don't mean what they say, but what they say and what they meant versus what I heard and what I understood them to mean, sometimes that's out of sync, right? So there's a lot of misunderstandings as a result of it, and therefore the other thing that of course also hampers things is bureaucracy, right? So if I invest in a company in India and I'm supposed to take my money out of India, it's just a nightmare at times, right? So I've invested in a company through Indian Angel Network, and after a year I'm still waiting for my money to come out of India. And there are people who are just making excuses. Maybe there are actually issues there, complications of processes. I have no idea. I'm a simple investor. I invested a little bit of money. The company sold. I'm trying to take my money out. How complicated that can be. Nowhere in the world, I don't think that it can be as complicated as here.
The government in India is now pushing startups. They're coming up with new policies to encourage more and more young Indians to join the startup world. But if you were to highlight 3 key takeaways that we could learn from economies like Singapore or the US, what would they be?
One is absolutely foremost is bureaucracy. Right? Now, bureaucracy comes in so many different colors and so many different departments, so many different institutional organizations in India. My sense is that somehow, right, if we want more people from outside to come in and invest here, then I think we have to make that a slightly simpler process. Actually, not slightly, but a lot simpler. Now, having said that, that could be our unfair advantage. So a lot of Indian businesses and Indian businessmen feel that in that complication lies in their unfair advantage. Okay, you have to now take a call. Do you really want to continue in that way and just be, all inside the country, or do you want to be all inclusive and let other people come in? So there is a lot of talk going on with the current government. There are a lot of conversations going on about how to simplify things and who and how. But on a day-to-day actual operating situation, like I said, for example, investing money and the forms you fill out, you do some wrong things here and there, you can get completely shot. Right? There is no penalty. There is no environment where there is no penalty. But on the other hand, now I'm trying to take my money out of the country. How difficult can it be? And it is incredibly difficult. And then, of course, people will say, "Oh, but yeah, you got to do the right things and you got to find the right consultants and do all of that." Well, again, that's bureaucratic. So I think the number one thing is bureaucracy. I think number two is this whole idea of investing in a product. Right? So I think services is terrific, and I think that's doing well. But I think from my point of view, I think we have to take that next step and make investment in products. I think in innovative products, right? So again, innovative is different thing for different people. Are we going to have the next Apple in Singapore? I mean, in India? I hope so. But again, it's all talk, right? You have to start some baby steps. And the baby steps is, are enough investors in India willing to take a risk on product? Well, and that is only the number two thing. Along with it, are there entrepreneurs who are able to build a product? You can't give a new guy who's never built a product and say, okay, here's $10 million, build a product. Well, they can't do that. So I think that slow, gradual skills development, business skills development, technical development, etc., and product development maturity to where people who have developed products, if we bring them to India, maybe of Indian origin, and then help us here, because there are many big companies like IBM, for example, or Electronic Sports Arts, EA. There are many companies that are building products in India. But again, those product architecture and designs are happening somewhere else. But so can we slowly start doing it in India? And there are more and more entrepreneurs who actually start developing products, who have developed products before. So I think those are the sort of two main things. I think third is therefore, I think the ascent of the technical skills, right? And the business skills. Technical and business skills to conquer the world. Why can't we build a large-scale Google or a Facebook here in India, right? You must have that savvy, which is the business savvy and the technical savvy, to make this into a huge, large organization and